When people talk about the origins of human civilization, most tend to think of ancient Egypt. But few realize that on the fertile land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, the Sumerians quietly built a culture whose influence would ripple through history for thousands of years. The Sumerians were not just diligent farmers working the fields, they were also remarkable inventors who created the world's very first writing system. Thanks to that breakthrough, knowledge, history, and all forms of spiritual value could be recorded and preserved for countless generations. Alongside their writing, the Sumerians mastered the art of building dense communities with increasingly sophisticated systems of governance. They founded some of the world's first true cities, complete with legal codes, courts, and fully formed government institutions. But they didn't stop there. The Sumerians pushed the boundaries of craftsmanship, trade, architecture, and even science and technology, reaching a level that later civilizations could only hope to match. If you look deeper into the spiritual life of the Sumerians, you'll find a world that is rich, polytheistic, and deeply mysterious. They believed that every force in nature was watched over by its own god. Their mythology, their legends about the creation of mankind, and even the ways they held their rituals all reflected a powerful urge to explore the universe and understand humanity's place within it. Even today, after archaeologists have unearthed thousands of relics and decoded countless ancient texts, the Sumerian civilization remains shrouded in mystery, with so many questions still left unanswered. We still wonder how they were able to advance so quickly in such a short period of time, or how they managed to construct buildings so sturdy they have survived for thousands of years. In today's video, we'll take a closer look at the legends and astonishing legacy of the Sumerians, a civilization that helped shape the course of human history and left behind mysteries that continue to challenge us all. So fasten your seatbelt as we dive into today's mystery. But first, you'll have incredible luck if you like and subscribe before this video ends. The mystery of Enki, the creation of mankind, and the Anunnaki gods. If we look back at the ancient mythology of the Sumerians, we find a world filled with powerful gods, each one directly shaping the fate of humankind. Among these deities, the group known as the Anunnaki stands out above all. They were called those who came from heaven and held a central role in stories about the origins of humanity. According to Sumerian belief, the Anunnaki were not just supreme gods, they were also the very beings who laid the first foundations for human existence. Legend has it that, at a time when the gods grew weary of having to labor themselves to keep the world in order, they decided to create a new species to serve them. That was when the god Enki, also known as Ea, appeared alongside the goddess Ninhursag in the role of creator. Together, they took clay from the riverbed, mixed it with the blood of a sacrificed god, and from that, mankind was born. In this tale, Enki is not just the god of water and wisdom. He is also the one who gave humanity the breath of life, transforming them from lifeless clay into living beings who could think, work, and worship the gods. But the story doesn't end there. As humans began to develop and live with more freedom, they became less obedient than the gods had hoped. Disobedience, pride, and actions that went against the will of the gods sparked great anger among these divine beings. The result was a series of disasters, most famously, the Great Flood, a catastrophe that swept away everything Enki had created. Even so, in some versions of the myth, Enki quietly helps humanity survive the wrath of the other gods, showing both compassion and faith in the human ability to overcome. Today, many modern theories have been put forward to explain these ancient stories. Some suggest that the Anunnaki were not gods in the traditional religious sense at all, but could have been extraterrestrial beings, what some now call ancient astronauts, who came to Earth thousands of years ago. According to this theory, the creation of humans was not simply a myth, but perhaps a form of genetic intervention, with advanced beings using their technology to shape our very species. Metallurgy and the art of craftsmanship. As society advanced, the Sumerians quickly realized they needed better tools and weapons if they were going to maintain productivity, defend their communities, and demonstrate power in the face of rival city-states. That need drove them to seek out and exploit the resources that nature provided, especially rare and valuable metals. Gold was the first metal the Sumerians were able to gather. Thanks to its natural presence in the riverbeds around Mesopotamia, the Sumerians didn't have to work too hard to find small flecks of gold mixed in with the river sand, and from there, they learned how to craft simple jewelry by flattening, hammering, and shaping it into earrings, necklaces, or beautifully crafted pendants. These pieces were both decorative and a clear symbol of the owner's wealth and power, but gold was much too soft for use as a tool or weapon. So, the Sumerians had to search for another metal that could meet the tougher demands of everyday life. That led them to copper, but extracting and working with this metal was no easy task. Copper ore didn't appear naturally on the Mesopotamian plain. It was buried deep in the Zagros Mountains, hundreds of rugged miles from their cities. Mining teams and traders had to cross deserts and treacherous mountains just to bring back heavy blue-green lumps of copper ore. Once they secured this precious material, the Sumerians had to learn to build clay furnaces, stoke them with charcoal, and use simple blowpipes to raise the temperature above 1,000 degrees Celsius. Only under that intense heat would the copper ore finally melt and settle to the bottom of the furnace as liquid metal. It's likely the Sumerians first discovered this process by accident, noticing copper ore melting when they fired pottery. From there, through patient trial and error, they learned to control the fire, build sturdier kilns, and make clay molds for casting axes, knives, or spearheads for work and warfare. But the Sumerians soon realized that pure copper was still too soft and would deform with use. Through practical experience and careful observation, they discovered that mixing a small amount of tin with copper produced a much stronger alloy, what we now call bronze. The Sumerians' preferred recipe was usually 9 parts copper to 1 part tin, showing they weren't just relying on luck, but had truly built up a deep, hands-on understanding of materials. Even if they didn't have the kind of scientific concepts we use today, bronze tools and weapons soon became widespread, from agricultural axes to military daggers and spearheads, and these bronze products became a symbol of the power of ancient Sumer. Metallurgy demanded more than just persistence and creativity. It also required close coordination between craftsmen, merchants, and miners. Copper and tin ores were often filled with impurities, so the Sumerians had to use charcoal to purify the metal and raise its quality, even though this process would easily crack kilns and release harmful smoke that was dangerous to their health. Keeping the temperature just right and maintaining a steady fire was a real art because a single mistake could ruin the entire batch, turning weeks of work to ash, and these precious materials had to be carried back across mountain ranges on long, grueling journeys, relying on a wide trade network that linked the many city-states of Mesopotamia. One thing that amazes modern researchers is just how quickly Sumerian metallurgical technology advanced. In just a few short centuries, they went from using crude stone tools to producing large quantities of high-quality bronze weapons and implements, and there's almost no evidence of the mistakes or failures you might expect in the archaeological record. No broken kilns, no cracked or ruined metals, and no major batches of flawed goods. This has led some scholars to wonder whether the Sumerians might have learned the secrets of metallurgy from another culture, but so far, no similar techniques have been found anywhere else from the same period. Still, the mystery of how the Sumerians managed to reach such heights remains a question that archaeologists and historians have yet to fully answer, and it's that sense of mystery that keeps the story of the Sumerians so fascinating, reminding us that human creativity really can transcend the limits of any era. A complex and polytheistic religion. For the Sumerians, the world was not simply governed by natural laws, but depended entirely on the will of the gods they worshipped. They believed that every rainstorm, every good or bad harvest, every long drought or sudden flood, all were decided by the gods, and no one could predict the future without listening for messages from the supernatural world. That belief drove the Sumerians to build massive ziggurat temples rising high in the heart of their cities, each tiered step reaching upward to the sky as if in a desperate plea, linking humanity with the divine. Inside these temples, the priests served as essential intermediaries between people and the gods. They were chosen and trained through a strict process to ensure every ritual was performed with absolute precision from start to finish, because even a single mistake could anger the gods and bring disaster upon the entire city-state. Offerings laid on the altars were not just food and fine wine. Sometimes they included rare animals, and in especially important cases, even human lives. But what's fascinating is that each city-state had its own unique patron god. Enlil, the god of wind and supreme authority, was the symbol of Nippur. while Enki, famed for wisdom and creativity, was worshipped in Eridu. Yet these gods were never imagined as existing in isolation. The Sumerians always saw them as a community, much like their own society. Their myths were not just explanations for natural phenomena. They helped the Sumerians feel a sense of kinship with their gods, recognizing that the deities too could grow angry, could love, could suffer loss, and had to struggle to keep their place, just like any Sumerian citizen. That's why religious ceremonies and festivals weren't just about asking for luck. They became major communal events. The Akitu festival, held at the start of the new year, was the clearest example. The king would take on the role of a god, reenacting legendary battles to reinforce the cosmic order, while priests sang traditional hymns, recited prayers, and led processions through city streets amid the cheers of the crowd. Everyone contributed offerings, hand-prepared, from the first ripe fruits of the season to cakes, wine, and treasured goods saved up by each family during the year. Not every ritual was a happy occasion, though. In certain moments, the Sumerians believed that only the greatest sacrifices would satisfy the gods. When burying kings or nobles, they were willing to send loyal servants to the afterlife to serve their masters forever. While these human sacrifices were rare and reserved for only the most significant occasions, they reflected just how seriously and faithfully the Sumerians treated their religion. And what's remarkable is that even through centuries of intercity rivalries, the Sumerians maintained a unified religious system, thanks to a clear hierarchy among the major and minor gods. Yet managing hundreds of deities, remembering every name, role, and preferred offering, was no easy feat for the priests, because even a small error, such as offering the wrong gift, could be considered an insult to the gods. The city-states also competed fiercely to prove the superiority of their patron gods. Uruk wanted Inanna to be honored above Enlil of Nippur, sparking endless debates among priestly factions. Still, the Sumerians showed remarkable creativity in resolving these conflicts, folding lesser gods into the family trees of the greater ones, weaving a flexible yet unified web of divine relationships that maintained order and stability in their complex belief system. If there's one thing that continues to puzzle modern scholars, it's why the Sumerians invested so much energy into building such a sophisticated religious system, far beyond anything else in their time. Perhaps in a land as unpredictable as Mesopotamia, where floods, drought, disease, and war were constant threats, believing in the protection of powerful gods gave people a sense of safety and helped hold their society together as everyone worked toward the common goal of pleasing the supernatural forces that ruled their world. The mysterious handbag motif in Sumerian art and other ancient civilizations. If there is any symbol that seems to transcend the boundaries of space and time, connecting ancient cultures across continents, it would surely be the mysterious handbag motif carved into ancient reliefs. When you look closely at the old works of art from Sumer in Mesopotamia, it's easy to spot images of gods standing tall and majestic on ancient stone platforms, always holding a small handbag with a rounded crescent-shaped handle and a perfectly rectangular body. What's especially intriguing is that this handbag motif doesn't just show up in Sumer. It can also be found on temple walls in Egypt, in Greek sculptures, and even on relics from faraway ancient civilizations in Central America and Turkey. No matter the country or the period, the image of that handbag carries a magnetic appeal, and it has left researchers puzzled as to what it truly represents. Over the years, many theories have been proposed to explain the repeated appearance of this symbol. Some believe that the handbag is a sign of ultimate power held only by gods or leaders at the very top of society. Other scholars focus on the detailed designs etched into the body of the bag, suggesting that it represents sacred knowledge or cosmic secrets that only the gods were allowed to possess. Looking from a more practical angle, some think that the handbag was actually a container for seeds or food, symbolizing the nurturing and life-sustaining gifts that the gods bestowed upon humanity. But the motif is not limited to religion alone. The handbag also appears as a protective item in rituals, a vessel for holding sacred objects or talismans meant to ward off evil spirits. The variety in how the handbag is portrayed and where it appears in art shows that this symbol carried a meaning far beyond just one civilization. When ancient craftsmen carved these handbags onto their reliefs, perhaps they were unconsciously expressing a longing to connect humanity with the divine, or a desire to safeguard knowledge and pass it down to future generations. The mysterious disappearance of the Sumerians. When we look back over the more than 3,000 years of brilliant Sumerian history in Mesopotamia, we find a story that is both magnificent and full of sobering questions about the fragility of every civilization on this earth. The Sumerians created a society made up of independent city-states, each with its own towering temples and its own system of government. They invented cuneiform writing to record knowledge and important transactions, ushering in the era of written history. For centuries, the Sumerians mastered the art of harnessing river water for agriculture, building sturdy irrigation systems, and developing crafts and commerce that brought wealth to their land. Guided by their kings, their civilization rose from one success to another, earning the respect and admiration of neighboring peoples. Yet, as any society reaches its peak, the seeds of decline can quietly take root, often without anyone at the time realizing it. At the start of the 2nd millennium BC, overuse of natural resources left once fertile land barren. Water sources became polluted, the environment changed, and agriculture suffered collapse after collapse. Crops failed year after year, and the population was faced with hunger and scarcity. As the fields grew bare, canals dried up, and droughts followed one after another, the people no longer enjoyed the security and stability their ancestors had known. At the same time, the Sumerian city-states grew increasingly divided. They fought constant battles over land, water, and economic advantages, shattering the unity that once held them together. This endless competition made the Sumerians vulnerable to outside powers. And it was at this moment that neighboring empires, like Akkad, Babylon, and Assyria, began to rise, launching conquests to expand their domains. On top of all this, the Sumerians faced countless other challenges, from plagues to natural disasters. Each flood or outbreak of disease further destabilized society, making daily life more fragile and uncertain. All these factors combined to produce a long, slow wave of decline, which stretched over generations until that once glorious civilization finally faded from the historical record. Perhaps this is a warning for every civilization, that if we fail to maintain a balance between progress and preserving nature, between harmony and competition, no matter how great we become, we will always be subject to the harsh and unforgiving cycles of history and time. The mystery of Sumerian astronomical knowledge. If there is one thing that truly set the Sumerians apart from so many other ancient civilizations, it was their unique way of seeing the universe and humanity's place within it. From their earliest days, the Sumerians developed a rich and vivid cosmology, a worldview where the gods not only ruled over every natural phenomenon, but also determined the very laws that governed the heavens and the earth. They believed that high above, the sky god Anu presided, watching over all the movements of the stars. Below Anu was Enlil, who controlled the air and the land, bringing favorable weather for the crops and holding the fate of the whole community in his hands. Alongside them was the goddess Inanna, embodying love, beauty, and the fierce power of war. But their beliefs didn't stop at worship or the building of grand temples in honor of the gods. The Sumerians created myths that were both profound and poetic, using them to explain the origins of the world. Works like the Enuma Elish and the story of Inanna's descent into the underworld are not only evidence of their boundless imagination, but also reveal their deep reflections on life and death, and on the endless cycle between order and chaos in the universe. Behind every legend lies a layer of meaning that researchers are still trying to unravel today. For the Sumerians, the gods were not distant beings somewhere far above. They were present in every rainstorm, in every planting season, and in every change in nature. They believed that all the laws of the cosmos, from the rising and setting of the sun to the endless paths of the stars, were shaped by divine hands. This belief led the Sumerians to build what may have been the very first astronomical observation system in history. Watching the sky was not just an act of faith, but played a crucial role in tracking time, planning harvests, and carrying out important rituals in society. Even though much about Sumerian astronomy remains a mystery today, no one can deny the profound legacy they left behind. A legacy where humanity, the gods, and the order of the universe are forever intertwined in the human imagination. The mystery of Sumerian seals, art, religion, and strange symbols. When we look back at the surviving artifacts of Sumerian civilization, it's impossible not to be struck by the small stone or metal seals that have become a special bridge between the distant past and the present day. For the Sumerians, these seals were not just practical tools for administration. They played a vital role in religious rituals, where every carved image carried the weight of a prayer sent to the gods. With each delicate motif, each careful line etched onto their tiny surfaces, the Sumerians left behind more than stories of mythology and gods who ruled the universe. They embedded signs and images whose meanings still elude modern understanding. What makes Sumerian seals so fascinating and mysterious is the sheer number of symbols that continue to spark debate among researchers and history enthusiasts alike. Many seals feature tiny dots, spiral shapes, or objects with forms entirely unlike the traditional symbols we associate with the Sumerians. Sometimes you can even find images that seem to resemble planets or floating objects in the sky. Some bold scholars have even linked these to UFOs or unidentified flying phenomena mentioned in modern times. While such theories remain controversial, no one can deny that the recurring appearance of these enigmatic symbols adds to the air of mystery and stirs our desire to understand the ancient Sumerians' knowledge of the cosmos. Today, archaeologists continue the painstaking work of deciphering every tiny inscription, every peculiar image left on these ancient seals, hoping to unlock the secrets at the heart of Sumerian civilization. Yet the deeper they go, the more they realize that much of the true meaning remains just out of reach. The Sumerian seals are like magical pieces of a vast historical puzzle, where each symbol might hold an entire story about the world of the ancients. The Great Ziggurat of Ur. When we talk about the wonders of the ancient world, the Ziggurat of Ur stands out as a symbol that has inspired awe and reflection for generations, showcasing the remarkable skill of the Sumerians. Thousands of years ago, the Sumerians built this massive stepped structure in the heart of the city of Ur, which was once the bustling center of all Mesopotamia. This monumental pyramid wasn't the work of a single king. Construction began under King Ur-Nammu of the 3rd dynasty of Ur and was later completed by his son, King Shulgi. This alone shows that it was a grand project, spanning many years and demanding tremendous effort as well as the far-sighted vision of Sumerian rulers. The entire structure of the ziggurat was designed with an inner core made of mud bricks, surrounded by layers of kiln-fired bricks that have proven to be remarkably durable. That's why, after so many centuries, its mark on this land still hasn't faded. Many archaeologists believe that this method of construction not only helped the building withstand the intense heat, but also turned the ziggurat into a powerful symbol of both authority and faith for the people of Ur. For the Sumerians, the ziggurat of Ur was far more than just a grand building. It was the heart of the whole city, the focal point of all major activities. It served as both the administrative and religious center, a place of worship for the moon god Nana, the patron deity of Ur, known as the one who lit up the night sky. At the top of the ziggurat, the Sumerians built a small temple dedicated exclusively to Nana, and only those chosen could serve there. The area surrounding the ziggurat included grain storage facilities, living quarters for priests, and other supporting structures. All of this reflects how central the ziggurat was to every aspect of Sumerian life, both spiritual and material. Some scholars have even suggested that beyond its religious role, the ziggurat may have served as an astronomical observatory or as a miniature representation of the cosmic mountain, a place where heaven and earth meet in the Sumerian imagination. To this day, despite years of effort by scientists to restore and study the site, the true purpose of the ziggurat of Ur remains an open question. Only the lower layers have survived intact, while the upper parts have long been lost to time and natural disaster. Yet the fascination and mystery of the ziggurat continue to inspire anyone who loves history to look deeper into this brilliant but still enigmatic era of ancient Sumerian civilization. The Sumerian King List. If you want to understand how the Sumerians viewed power and authority, the Sumerian King List is one document that will surely make you pause and think. This list is more than just a simple record. It's like a mysterious chronicle where the lines between myth and reality are always intertwined. The most famous original copy of this list was discovered in the city of Nippur, a major religious center of Sumer. Though other versions have turned up in various places, with the best-known one now housed at the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford. The list records the names and reigns of kings stretching from the pre-dynastic era, even before the Great Flood, all the way to the 14th century BC. What stands out most are the dynasties that supposedly lasted for tens of thousands of years, numbers so staggering that anyone reading them has to wonder whether they reflect real history or are just legendary inventions of the Sumerians. The earliest kings, like Alalim or Alalungar, are described as ruling for unimaginably long periods, while later names such as Gilgamesh have left behind genuine traces in the historical record. It's this blend of myth and reality that has made the king list an endless source of fascination for researchers. To this day, people still debate which parts are true history and which are symbolic messages the Sumerians intended for later generations. Some scholars believe the king list was used to legitimize and strengthen the authority of the ruling dynasty. Others think those enormous numbers were meant to express eternity and immortality, a reflection of humanity's longing to reach the realm of the gods. Another interesting point is that if you look closely, you'll notice striking parallels between the Sumerian king list and stories from the Bible, especially those about the Great Flood. Before the Great Deluge, the kings lived for extraordinarily long lifespans. After the flood, everything returned to a familiar order, with human lifespans greatly reduced. The role of women and Queen Kubaba. When people think of ancient societies, women are often pictured as quietly standing in the background. But if you pause to look closely at the history of Sumer and truly consider the role of women in this land, you'll see a very different picture from that of many other civilizations of the time. In Sumer, women weren't just confined to work within the family. They could own property, conduct their own business, and even initiate divorce if life didn't turn out as they'd hoped. While these rights depended on social status and the particular era, this still set Sumer apart. It was a society where mothers, wives, and women merchants had a voice of their own, with laws that clearly outlined their rights and protections, something most other major civilizations of that age did not provide. But women's roles didn't end with personal autonomy or economic participation. Sumerian women could rise to hold positions of significant influence in religion and culture. Enheduanna is a striking example. She was the daughter of Sargon of Akkad, and also served as the high priestess of Ur, remembered in history as humanity's first known author, leaving behind poems and prayers dedicated to the goddess Inanna. Enheduanna's writings were more than religious texts. They reflected her thoughts, hopes, and faith as a woman. She became a model for Sumerian women who used knowledge and faith to claim their place in ancient society. But to truly appreciate the depth of women's roles in Sumer, you have to know about Queen Kubaba, a name that may sound unfamiliar, but stands as a testament to breakthrough and the idea that ability and determination can matter more than bloodline or birth. Kubaba is the only woman who appears in the Sumerian king list, and she wasn't the daughter of any king. Through her own abilities, she steadily rose to become the ruler of Kish around 2500 BC. Records say she didn't just reign for a short time, but founded a dynasty that lasted a century. She left an indelible mark on Sumerian history, becoming a symbol of female strength in an age when men held nearly all the power. Still, even with outstanding figures like Enheduanna or Kubaba, the daily lives of most Sumerian women, especially those from the lower classes, remain a mystery to modern researchers, as surviving records mainly reflect the perspectives of the elite or those in special positions within society. The legendary city of Arata. When you look back at the old Sumerian epic stories, you will find a name that is both familiar and mysterious. Arata, a city once described as the greatest rival of Uruk and a land that has sparked curiosity for generations. In the Epic of Enmerkar and in the legends about Lugalbanda, Arata appears as a city so wealthy that even the great kings of Uruk were cautious of it, a place where everything from treasures to fine crafts was said to be far above the standards of that time. Ancient lines describe Arata as a rich land where rare metals, shining gems, and intricate works of art were created by the most skillful hands, enough to make any neighboring civilization look on with admiration. Although the epics left the image of Arata in people's minds, up to now, the real location of this city is still a big question that archaeologists and historians have not been able to fully answer. Some believe Arata was on the Iranian plateau, where high mountains and mineral mines are hidden underground. Others suggest the city might have been in the Caucasus, or even farther in Armenia, or in the Indus Valley. where ancient civilizations once thrived. Each theory opens up a new direction for historians, but so far, none of the searches have brought back clear evidence to confirm where Arata truly was on the map of the ancient world. Because no real traces have ever been found, some scholars believe Arata might just be a legendary city created by the Sumerians. Maybe Arata was never a real place, but a symbol for an endless dream of progress, wealth, and boundless creativity. Whether it was legend or reality, Arata is still a lasting inspiration for those who love to discover. And every time that name is mentioned, we are reminded that some mysteries from the past are still waiting for us to keep searching. The passion for beer. If you ever had the chance to travel back in time to ancient Sumer, you would quickly realize that beer was not just a simple drink, but an essential part of the cultural and spiritual life of the people there. On ancient seals carved with great care, you can see images of people sitting together around large jars, drinking beer through long straws, clear evidence of a tradition that was closely tied to Sumerian life for thousands of years. During festivals and family gatherings, beer was always present as something that brought people together and connected each individual to the larger community. The Sumerians did not just invent the way to brew beer, they honored this craft so much that they even had a special goddess for it, Ninkasi, who was seen as the mother of brewing. Songs praising Ninkasi were composed and passed down from generation to generation, not only describing the process of making beer, but also reminding everyone of the sacredness and deep meaning this drink carried. The Sumerian recipe was truly unique, as they used barley to create a thick, rich beer that was so dense people had to use straws to enjoy it. But the value of Sumerian beer went far beyond taste. It reached into every part of spiritual life. For the Sumerians, drinking beer was a way for people to share happiness, to take away the fatigue after long days of hard work, and to give everyone a chance to feel closer as a community. Beer was not just a way to quench thirst or add nutrition. It was seen as a gift from the gods, a symbol of happiness and fulfillment that everyone wished to have. The tradition of drinking beer lasted for thousands of years, leaving a deep mark not only on Sumerian culture but also spreading to other civilizations. Knowledge beyond its time. If there is anything that makes modern historians feel both astonished and deeply impressed when they talk about the Sumerian civilization, it is the treasure trove of knowledge the Sumerians left for humanity. Among their most important inventions, the base 60 counting system they created became the foundation for how we measure time today. With 1 hour divided into 60 minutes, 1 minute into 60 seconds, and the circle divided into 360 degrees. Whether you are looking at a clock or reading a map, the imprint of Sumer is quietly present in every number and angle of modern life. The Sumerians did not stop at shaping units of measurement like 12 inches in a foot. They also laid the groundwork for a whole range of measurement systems that great civilizations after them, such as Babylon, would continue to inherit and develop. Thanks to these logical systems, their construction, crop planning, and even social organization became more accurate and efficient, helping Sumerian society grow steadily for many centuries. But if you look at how the Sumerians communicated, you will see just how remarkable they were. The Sumerian language is one of the earliest written languages in the world, and to this day, it has not been shown to connect with any major language group. They invented cuneiform writing, which started as simple signs on clay and slowly developed into a system of more than 700 highly complex symbols. It wasn't just language or mathematics that made the Sumerians stand out. Their achievements in agriculture and irrigation also won admiration from the whole world. In the dry land of Mesopotamia, they built complex canal networks connecting fields and villages, controlling the water from 2 great rivers to support a large and stable population over many generations. That system was not just a tool for farming, but a clear proof of an organizational and technical level far beyond their time, a foundation that helped Sumerian society become one of the earliest centers of human development. An extensive trade network. If you ever thought that a great civilization had to be built on fertile land with plenty of resources, the story of the Sumerians will make you look at things differently. In the sun-drenched land of Mesopotamia, even though they lacked almost everything from wood to stone or precious metals, the Sumerians managed to create such a vast trade network that historians today are still amazed by their boldness and intelligence. Without forests to get wood for houses, without quarries to build temples, and with no copper or tin mines under their feet, the Sumerians chose to open their doors in every direction, searching for what they needed through dangerous journeys both overland and by sea. In their efforts to expand their trading network, the Sumerians reached Dilmun, a rich land that is now Bahrain, once a major hub for the largest copper shipments in the ancient world and a meeting place for merchants from all across the Middle East to exchange goods. They also sailed to Oman in search of rare minerals, then crossed deserts to the Indus Valley, where the Harappan civilization once flourished with its great cities and hidden treasures. The Sumerian caravans didn't stop there. They moved northwest toward Anatolia, the land that would later become Turkey, a place rich in tin, silver, and precious stones. They were not afraid to cross the Mediterranean Sea to find cedar wood in Lebanon, the prized material used for the beams of the grandest palaces and the most sacred temples in Sumer. Many records even mention Egypt and Ethiopia as places the Sumerians dreamed of reaching to trade for gold, ivory, spices, and other rare goods. Every time archaeologists find a trace of an ancient trade route or an unusual jar or gemstone turning up far from home, people are once again amazed by the real scale of the trade network the Sumerians built. Even so, to this day, there are still many mysteries about how they managed to organize such large-scale trading expeditions. One of the earliest legal systems. The Sumerians understood that they needed a clear set of laws so that everyone could follow the same rules and justice could be applied fairly to all. The appearance of the Code of Ur-Nammu around 2100 BC marked a turning point, a new era in the legal history of humankind, when the very first laws were carefully recorded on clay tablets in cuneiform script and publicly announced by the king, who declared that the highest gods, An and Enlil, had entrusted him with the mission of protecting justice and maintaining order in this world. This code was not just a list of regulations, it also reflected the Sumerians' practical and human perspective on society. The laws paid special attention to protecting the most vulnerable members of society, and they addressed complex civil matters to help society become more stable and sustainable. The Sumerians understood early on that to keep society fair, it had to be organized into different classes with clear rules for each role. In their legal system, the king and nobles were at the top, free people in the middle, and slaves at the bottom. Penalties and compensation were set differently for each group, making sure that everyone understood their rights and responsibilities and recognized their place within the overall order. Even in economic matters, the Sumerians set out specific numbers, like 1/5 for money or 1/3 for grain, showing that they already understood the role of law in protecting fairness in commercial transactions. Building a written legal system in an age when most people could not read or write was a huge challenge. The Sumerians not only had to invent cuneiform writing to record every rule, they also had to train a group of scribes who could read and write, making sure the laws would be preserved for a long time and not changed at the whim of a powerful few. The laws were inscribed on clay tablets and placed in busy public spaces like temples or city squares. But in reality, not everyone could read and understand these laws by themselves. That is why priests and judges played an especially important role. They were the ones who explained the laws to the people, protected the objectivity of the rules, and made sure that no one could abuse their power or twist the original meaning of the law. It can be said that the constant rivalry among city-states, along with the pressure of a growing economy based on farming, trade, and exchange, gave the Sumerians a strong motivation to create public and consistent rules to resolve disputes. Religion also strengthened the role of law because the Sumerians believed that laws were commands from the gods delivered to the king, making every article sacred and helping society maintain stability for a long time, without needing the brutal punishments used by some later civilizations. The greatest legacy left by the Code of Ur-Nammu is not just found on those ancient clay tablets, but in its lasting influence, serving as the foundation for later famous codes such as the Code of Eshnunna, the Code of Hammurabi, and many legal rules in Jewish civilization. Looking back at history, what still surprises researchers is the way the Sumerians built such a strict, humane, and influential legal system. Even though they had no modern technology, no specialized law schools, and no complex administrative networks like the civilizations that came after them. An early education system. The Sumerians quickly realized that without an effective way to store information, every contract, every harvest, every legend about the gods, and every important community decision could easily be forgotten. That is why cuneiform writing appeared around 3500 BC, marking a great leap not only for the Sumerians, but for all of human history, because for the first time, people could record every thought, every economic, religious, and social activity onto clay tablets and pass them down to future generations. However, reading and writing cuneiform was not simple. The system had hundreds of symbols, each with its own meaning, and to master them all, students had to spend many years practicing with patience. To meet this need, Aduba schools were set up close to temples or palaces, gathering the best teachers that Sumerian society could train. In the Aduba, there were no modern desks or chairs, just clay tablets and sharpened reed pens. Students sat on the floor, listened as the teacher introduced each sign, and had to repeat the lessons again and again until they remembered perfectly and could write each character correctly according to the teacher's example. In that strict environment, the teacher was called father, students were called sons, and the assistants were older brothers. Every mistake was pointed out sternly, sometimes even punished with the rod, because the Sumerians believed strict discipline was the only way to train people who could remember and pass on knowledge to the whole society. Students didn't just learn writing, they also studied math based on the base 60 system, solved complex multiplication and division problems like calculating the area of land, memorized multiplication tables, and worked on geometry to help with collecting taxes or building the city's major structures. This shows that the Sumerians understood early on that education wasn't just about literacy, but was the only way to create the people needed to run and manage the city-state. However, access to education was not the same for everyone. Most students at Aduba were sons of the noble class, wealthy merchant families, or officials, while farmers, slaves, and most women had no opportunity to go to school. Only a few female priestesses were allowed to learn to read and write to help manage temple property, but this number was small compared to the whole society. That's why graduates from the Aduba were highly valued and often became scribes for temples or major commercial centers, where they kept records of contracts, inventories of grain stores, drafted correspondence, or preserved legal texts and epic stories. What made the Sumerian education system especially impressive was that building and maintaining Aduba was not easy. The society had to invest significant resources to build schools, train teachers, and make sure students had enough time and conditions to study for many years instead of having to work for a living from a young age. Any family with a child in school had to sacrifice labor to give the next generation a chance to move up, while teachers had to be people who understood writing, mathematics, and ethics, as well as being strict and patient enough to train new generations of students. Despite the difficulties and challenges, the Sumerians kept the Aduba system running for thousands of years, from around 3000 BC until their civilization faded and was replaced by new empires. The legacy that the Aduba system left for humanity truly goes far beyond the Sumerian era because it laid the foundation for organized education, opened the way for the modern school system, and became a symbol of knowledge and progress for many centuries. Even so, the big question about why the Sumerians invested in formal education so early still leaves many researchers wondering, because clearly, not every society understood that knowledge is the key to the success and strength of an entire community. Complex burial rituals. What archaeologists, led by Leonard Woolley, found at the Royal Cemetery in Ur revealed not only immense wealth, but also a powerful religious belief and a tightly organized social system of the Sumerians, shown through a series of complex, costly, and sometimes extremely brutal burial rituals. Out of more than 2,000 graves unearthed, only 16 were classified as royal, standing out for their scale, the value of the artifacts, and especially the signs of human sacrifice, a practice that remains controversial and mysterious even to this day. The tomb of Queen Puabi is the clearest example of how the Sumerians saw life and death. She was laid out on a wooden bed, dressed in gold necklaces, crescent-shaped earrings, and a magnificent headdress made from gold, lapis lazuli, and other precious stones brought from distant lands. Surrounding her, archaeologists found as many as 25 bodies, guards, musicians, and handmaidens, carefully arranged as if they were still waiting to serve their queen in the afterlife. In other graves, burial rituals were even more elaborate. The body of a king or queen was placed in a stone chamber, surrounded by treasures like golden lyres, gold vases, finely carved cups, and the Standard of Ur, a wooden box inlaid with shell and precious stones, showing scenes of war and peace and considered a masterpiece of ancient Sumerian art. But the rituals did not stop at burying treasures. They also included sending servants into death pits, open courtyards attached to the burial chambers, where dozens or even hundreds of people were arranged in neat rows, wearing splendid clothing and golden headdresses, holding musical instruments, looking as if they were about to enter a grand ceremony. The largest death pit, numbered PG-1237, contained up to 74 bodies, from soldiers in bronze helmets to handmaidens with fine jewelry, all showing that they took part in a ritual before leaving this world. At first, Woolley believed these people drank poison to follow their master to the afterlife. But modern CT scans have revealed a colder truth. Many were killed by sharp blows to the head, a quick but violent death, reflecting a strong belief in the need to serve their ruler even after death. Burial rituals were not just short ceremonies, they were often major community events. They began with preserving the body using heat and mercury-based compounds as an early form of mummification, followed by feasts, music, weeping, and finally the closing of the death pits, marking the end of one life cycle and the start of the eternal journey. To organize these rituals, the Sumerians had to mobilize huge resources: gold from India, lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, agate from the Zagros Mountains, along with hundreds of people in service, showing that burial rituals were not only religious but also a statement of the king's or queen's power beyond all limits. But the question that troubles researchers the most is why so many were willing to accept being sacrificed to go with their ruler to the next world. Some suggest it was voluntary, seen as a great honor since serving in the royal court was a dream for many, and following their master into the afterlife was part of a belief in the continuation of life, not just an ending. The deepest meaning of these burial rituals was that they helped reinforce the supreme power of the kings, proving their dominance not only in the world of the living, but also in the world beyond. At the same time, they showed the ability of Sumer's rulers to command and mobilize both material resources and people. The presence of luxury artifacts like golden lyres, turquoise jewelry, silver vases, or the Standard of Ur was clear evidence of advanced craftsmanship, a vast trade network reaching all the way to India and Afghanistan, and a tightly organized society where everyone knew their role and responsibility in every major ritual. In these grand burials, the whole community gathered for feasts, music, mourning, and witnessed each step as the king or queen was sent to their final rest, reaffirming the social order and connecting everyone in a shared belief in the next world. However, the practice of human sacrifice in royal burials was not always common. After the Ur royal period, this custom gradually disappeared, likely due to changes in religious beliefs, or because the costs and resources became too great for society to bear. Still, the royal tombs that remain in Ur are an astonishing legacy because they not only tell a story of wealth but also give us deep insight into the Sumerian religious system, power, art, and the connection between people and the spiritual world. The objects found, from the Standard of Ur to Puabi's jewelry, not only prove the craftsman's skill but also show the vision and desire for immortality among the Sumerians, even if they had to use harsh rituals to confirm their power and status. Behind the splendor and brutality of these burial rituals lies a big question that still makes us think. Why were the Sumerians willing to invest such massive resources, sacrifice people, and organize ceremonies lasting many days just to prepare for life after death? Perhaps in a world always threatened by war and floods, the Sumerians used these rituals to prove that power and social order would last forever, no matter how time and fate changed. That cruelty, so rich in symbolism, makes the story of the Sumerians not only fascinating, but also a reminder that since ancient times, people have tried every way to assert their place in the universe and leave a mark that cannot be erased by history. Knowledge of medicine. The people here not only faced a harsh natural world, but also had to overcome all kinds of illnesses that threatened them constantly, from lingering fevers to broken bones. And in many cases, they had to fight outbreaks of disease that would follow every major flood. In the face of all these dangers, their hope rested on the healers, whom the Sumerians called Aesu. These were people who not only understood medicinal plants, but also knew how to use both practical knowledge and sacred rituals passed down from their ancestors. Clay tablets that have survived until today reveal to us how the Sumerians approached medicine. These tablets, preserved in the library of King Ashurbanipal at Nineveh, contain hundreds of prescriptions that clearly describe symptoms, ingredients, and treatment methods. These records show that they knew how to use willow bark to reduce headaches or bone pain, a method that may be the ancient root of modern aspirin. They used garlic to fight infection and took advantage of honey as a natural antiseptic for wounds, even though they had no concept of bacteria or germs as we do now. Along with herbal remedies, the Sumerians also practiced simple surgical techniques, like cutting open abscesses or setting broken bones with wooden splints. They even paid attention to hand washing before any procedure, something that later generations would recognize as a basic principle of modern medicine. When treating the sick, they didn't just rely on personal experience, but often worked together with a shipu, spiritual healers, to perform rituals that would drive away evil spirits or ask for protection from the goddess Gula. To have enough healing materials, the Sumerians not only collected medicinal herbs from riverbanks, but also imported rare ingredients like resin from the Zagros Mountains or spices from distant parts of India. They ground leaves, roots, and seeds into powder, then mixed them with oil or beer to create drinks, ointments, or poultices, always recording each dosage and method in detail on clay tablets for future generations to study and apply. Some tablets list as many as 250 kinds of plants and 120 minerals used in medicine, from familiar ones like dill to sulfur, showing that their knowledge reached far beyond what we might expect from an ancient society. Even without modern scientific tools, the Sumerians found ways to test the effectiveness of each remedy through real-life observation and by passing on their experience from one generation to the next. If a plant could reduce a patient's fever, they would write down the method in detail to teach those who came after. Through this long process of accumulation, Sumerian medical knowledge grew richer. They were also willing to learn from other cultures, like Elam or Harappa, through trade, and sometimes even veterinary knowledge was used to treat people. Because of this, the Sumerians learned to distinguish many different diseases. For example, telling the difference between a fever caused by infection and stomach pain caused by food, and even describing the symptoms of diabetes by noting the sweet taste of urine. Becoming a healer in Sumer was not easy. They had to spend years learning to read and write cuneiform in the Aduba schools, memorize hundreds of herbs, minerals, rituals, and work closely with a shipu to balance between religious belief and practical knowledge. Even though each city-state competed fiercely for influence, medical knowledge was widely shared through clay tablets, helping ancient Mesopotamia maintain a unity in the understanding of healing. However, advanced medicine was usually reserved for the wealthy, while farmers and slaves mostly had to rely on herbs or simply pray to the gods for relief. It is believed that even Hippocrates, the man often called the father of Western medicine, inherited some of the spirit of observation and diagnostic methods from ancient Mesopotamian medicine. The use of willow bark, honey, the careful recording of dosages and symptoms, all these traditions continued in folk medicine for thousands of years afterward. To this day, the question of how the Sumerians were able to gather such a vast wealth of medical knowledge remains a mystery, but perhaps it was their harsh living conditions and the instinct to survive that pushed them to keep observing and innovating. Texts about divine weapons. One of the most striking themes in Sumerian mythology is the stories of divine weapons, recorded on ancient clay tablets and passed down through the centuries. When reading the epic Lugal-e, one finds the image of Sharur, the mace symbolizing the power of the god Ninurta, which was not just a weapon to conquer enemies, but also a living creature with a soul. Sharur could even transform into a winged lion and give strategic advice to its master in the midst of fierce battles. Sharur helped Ninurta defeat the serpent Kur, which the Sumerians saw as a symbol of chaos and darkness in the world, thereby restoring order and safety to human society. It was not just Ninurta who possessed such mysterious weapons. Many other Sumerian gods also appeared with supernatural tools. The sun god Utu always appeared with a blazing sword, and every time Utu cut through the mountains, it signaled the sunrise on the horizon and the beginning of a new day for the entire Mesopotamian land. The goddess Inanna, worshipped as both a goddess of war and of love, was described as having weapons sprouting from her shoulders. The descriptions of these divine weapons have sparked endless curiosity because such stories contain details that seem to belong only to modern science fiction. Some researchers believe that the legend of Sharur may reflect the Sumerians' admiration for Bronze Age metallurgy when they first acquired powerful copper weapons far superior to the old wooden or stone weapons. However, Sharur's abilities to fly, to deliver messages, and even to change form bring up mysterious elements that lead some modern scholars to ask whether the Sumerians were merely mythologizing technology, or if they truly witnessed phenomena beyond the understanding of their age. Many theories suggest that stories of supernatural weapons might have started from real-life experiences, like the Sumerians seeing meteors streak across the sky or hearing thunder and imagining it as the voice of the gods. There are also ideas that, through trade with other cultures, such as Harappa in India or nomadic tribes in the Zagros Mountains, the Sumerians encountered new technologies that inspired legends about flying or divine weapons. Still, up to now, archaeologists have only found artifacts like copper axes, sickle swords, arrowheads, or chariots made of bronze, and no real evidence of weapons that could fly or deliver messages. Looking back at Sumerian society, we see a highly practical community that recorded everything from trade contracts and taxes to court rulings on clay tablets and stored them carefully in city libraries. For that reason, their creation of stories about divine weapons was not simply the product of imagination. The influence of these stories goes far beyond Sumerian mythology, reaching into many other cultures. That legacy shows the imagination of the Sumerians was not just a dream of power, but also a reflection of the desire to master nature, protect their community, and reach for wonders beyond their grasp. The Sumerian Great Flood Legend, a story beyond time. In the vast world of Sumerian mythology, the legend of the Great Flood stands out as a story that crosses all boundaries of time and culture, becoming the foundation for many later legends across the ancient Middle East. From epic texts like the Epic of Ziusudra, the Epic of Gilgamesh, and Atrahasis, the tale of a flood that swallowed the world has been recorded with details that still make later generations reflect on the fate of humankind in the face of divine power. At the heart of this story is the character Ziusudra, called Utnapishtim or Atrahasis in other cultures, a regular person who is chosen and entrusted by the god Enki. When the gods grew angry at humanity's mistakes and decided to punish the world with a catastrophic flood, Ziusudra alone received a secret warning. Enki taught him how to build a sturdy boat to save his family and every living creature on Earth. As the rain poured down and the waters rose, sweeping away all traces of the old world, that small boat became a symbol of hope and survival, rising above the terrible disaster. The story of the Great Flood is not just about retelling a great calamity. It also deeply reflects the Sumerian belief in the power of the gods, in the balance between order and chaos in the universe. For them, the devastating flood was a punishment for human disobedience, but at the same time, it was a chance to restore order and renew the world. The image of Ziusudra following Enki's instructions to protect life shows a longing to rise above disaster and a belief in the kindness and forgiveness of the gods toward humanity. Not only the Sumerians, but many later civilizations, Babylon, Akkad, and even the Bible, would inherit and transform the story of the Great Flood, using it to highlight moral values and lessons about humility and human responsibility before nature, the universe, and the unseen powers. Because of its lasting power and deep meaning, the legend of the Great Flood continues to hold its value and is still retold in the minds of people across generations. If you're fascinated by the mysteries of the Sumerians, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment below about what sparks your curiosity the most. Let's keep exploring the wonders that are still waiting for us in the next video.
you.